Oakley Doakley. Oakley Doakley. Big morning crowd. I think there's a few seats in the front you can
Okay, we'll get started. Okay, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marcus Almer. I'm with Gate B, a marketing technology solutions provider. We help companies to increase their marketing performance with digital asset management solutions. It's my pleasure to moderate this panel here this morning. In the next hour, we will be talking about the video strategy, distribution channels, advertising, and technology. First, I would like to give this fantastic panel here the opportunity to introduce themselves. And after that, we'll start the conversation with a few key questions, and then we'll see where that takes us. I will also make sure to address any questions from the audience, so if you want to know anything, want to have a question during the session, feel free to ask any of our experts here. So, Josh, why don't you get started?
My name's Josh Lamb. I'm the founder of Multipop, and we're a patented content distribution platform to push out new ways of monetizing content in and around digital video, focusing on new native and programmatic as well as direct commerce opportunities.
Good morning. So I'm Scott Holmes. I'm actually sitting in for Bruce Louisi. I'm the Chief Digital Officer of ATLX. It's athletics with an X. We are a sports, entertainment, and health network. What's interesting and unique about this network is you have the sports and athletic content, both weekend warriors all the way through professional athletes, but you can actually tie into their vital statistics and even include your own into the application so that you can manage your health, your wellness, your fitness, and gauge yourself against the pros.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Weinroth. I'm head of client success at VideoAmp. We're a programmatic video advertising platform, and our goal is to help advertisers and brands and agencies transact seamlessly across all screens.
I'm Travis Howe, Senior Vice President at Envision Inc. We are an ad sales technology platform, and we power the ad sales organizations for most major network broadcasters and cable companies.
I'm Steve C.
brands and around 20,000 self-serve users to create interactive video.
And I'm Jeff Stansfield, President of Advantage Video Systems. We're a systems integration company developing workflow solutions for all the entertainment and media and entertainment people. So that's what we do.
Okay, thank you very much. By the end of 2017, digital ad spending will be bigger than TV ad spending for the first time in history. Well, that's at least a prediction. Digital ad spending in the US will hit about $77 billion, TV ad spending around $72 billion. Digital video plays an increasingly important role and is growing exponentially. So let's talk first about the user experience. Content owners and distributors are starting to focus more on engagement rather than poor consumption of content. What do you guys see what companies are doing? What is your organization doing in that regards? How do people get more engaged versus just consuming content?
Well, we see a lot of metadata. I think one of the most important aspects of that is the exchange of metadata, and it's not just one way. Metadata is going both ways. So, when the consumer walks up to the television, it's not just, showing the viewer histories of what they've watched and taking count of what they watch, how long they watch, whether they keep, whether they abandon a show or not. But it's also linking up to the user. So when Billy walks up to the TV knows that Billy's there. Because Billy's hooked up his smartphone device to the TV, and the TV knows he's there. So it's grabbing Billy's information. And the same thing with mom and dad and anybody else who walks up to the TV. So that information is coming back and being collected and being used to deliver the brand content that will be most relevant to the person who's watching that. So Billy's not watching feminine hygiene products. Billy's watching Game Boys ads and stuff like that. So it's also bringing him recommendations on what to watch based on who he is. So we've seen a lot of that. We've helped our clients through asset management, reverse asset management, collecting that data and giving that and allowing the advertisers and the content providers to utilize that data to bring more relevant content to users.
So that's from a broadcaster's perspective. The engagement, where does the engagement itself come into play more?
Well, from our experience, user experience is absolutely paramount to everything we do. We have a self-serve tool, as I mentioned, and so we're constantly trying to improve the way that can deliver a tool for people. But most importantly for us is the end viewer experience of the interactive videos that we create, and actually what we decide on how to create user experience based around interactive videos based on the amount of data that we have from people watching videos and interacting with them. We've got the luxury of having thousands of users and billions of viewings happening all over the world every single day. And we have about 150 data points from every viewing that gets reported back to our systems. From different devices, different browsers, how people will react to different interactive elements. Just for an example, things like shop wall video, we found that if you put the price of the product on the interactive hotspot, so hovers over the top of the video, you see a 35% uplift in sales. And actually, if you put things like product name, you see even more interactivity. And actually, because interactive video is still a relatively new experience for most people, we have to really spell it out. And we found things like being very, very overtly call to action, having things like click to buy or touch to buy and on touch device. That can increase interactivity on a video by 50%. So audiences still have to be educated about this stuff. And it's those sort of learnings that we're picking up from this data that we're gathering every single day, which is incredibly interesting. And actually, just the other day, we had a really interesting insight into mobile users, where we can create these heat maps of where people are actually interacting with the touch device. And it always tends to hover around where the right thumb is on the screen. So if people are really lazy, they just want to reach over and touch something on the video that's nearest to the thumb. They don't want to make the effort to stretch it. So if you're making an interactive video, put your hotspots at the bottom right hand corner of the video and you'll see the best performance.
Interesting.
I think the biggest key to it is, I agree with a lot of what Steve said, just in general, the user experience. I think what consumers want is the opt-in, opt-out ability. That's one of the keys. And the other thing is there's this delicate balance of form over function. At the end of the day, for this to get massively adopted, it's got to move the needle monetarily. So the idea of integrating some new ways, new native ad formats, which more and more publishers are going for versus programmatic because they drive more of a premium. And commerce opportunities that currently a lot of publishers, it's just money left on the table. Everything's very merchandised. I mean, we can all see that. But everyone's missing the boat on that for the most part because there isn't a true scalable way to do that. So I think going out into the ethos here, it's being multi-platform. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket. The other part is make sure that the consumers get to choose when and how they want to watch it. And the last part of it, and most important part of it, is can the publisher make money off of it effectively with lead staff?
Yeah, I'd like to, and I would also agree with that. I'd like to add on is as a content creator and as a curator of content, as well as a publisher, we have to think about our experience. It's a great question. You have to think about the experience from the content itself, and that can, whether it's video content, whether it's written, interactive, whatever that content on the page is how is the user, what mode or mood are they in
how do you have the navigation and whether it's advertising, whether it's a click to commerce, whatever that activity is, that call to action, how do you create an authenticity, right? So the big word for me is how does that experience, right, user experience today, it's not just about where you put the button, but it's about what are you presenting that user, and most likely they're going to be on a mobile phone or eventually in front of the TV, is what is the opportunity to really fully engage them? And you've got to, there's a lot to look at, but it's important.
Yeah, I agree with him that I think a lot of it comes down to sort of the user experience in terms of their present place and mindset. In the past, we've done pretty interesting campaigns leveraging weather data to basically tie in a weather feed and serve dynamically overlays that that basically serves images based on the weather in certain areas. So if it's hot out, we serve like a cold, nice latte, or if it's cold out, we serve the warm up. And we obviously see that engagement rates increase significantly when you speak directly to that user.
So what about the user experience across different platforms? Where do you start? Do you sit down and say, okay, let's focus on mobile and everything else worry later, or do you have how do you tackle the cross-platform issue? How do you tackle where you put the efforts first and what follows? That seems to be a really big challenge when it comes to user experience, going from a television screen down to a phone.
Yeah, I'll jump back in on that one because I'm smiling about this because we're a mobile network first, right? So I've been espousing mobile first for better than 5 years now, and the recent financial announcement, if anybody watched Facebook's quarterly numbers, 95% of their revenue came from mobile, and they are undoubtedly one of the largest producers and conveyors of social content out there. So when we look at experiences, yes, we have over-the-top experiences where we are or will be in Apple TV and Roku and all the over-the-top opportunities. We'll have an online for those that can access, and it's got to be HTML5 where it can be very responsive in its design so people can access it via the web browser. But it's really about what's the mobile experience. And if you can't really produce a quality experience in a very short amount of attention span and time on a very small screen, then you're not going to succeed. It's as simple as that.
Well, I think also it has to do with, not only just engaging people on a mobile device, but also, engaging people on a range of devices. So taking the same content, taking the same project, and engaging it not only on mobile devices, but then bringing people over to the other devices, because we saw with some of the TV shows that we've been doing in engaging second screen technologies, and people watching shows, and then also engaging them to take that experience onto their iPads. And we saw some of our clients, like the show Sons of Anarchy, where they sold, in one season, they sold 35,000 pairs of Jack's glasses because people were engaging the video on the iPad and clicking on the iPad to buy those glasses.
Sure, but I would say iPad falls under mobile.
Right, but iPad, small mobile devices like iPhones and Android phones and stuff like that, and then larger Android devices like iPads and larger Android devices, and then TVs. They're really kind of classified. I kind of classify them into 3 different devices in a way, even though the 2 are mobile devices, and in a way, the TVs are also a mobile device, and they're not movable, but they still have all the same apps and stuff like that. But engaging people to bring people to from one device to another device, and so we're working with companies to try to bring people from this device to that device, and from the mobile device to the TV. So it engages them to do more and be more involved, because we find that with TV, when people are engaged on a mobile device, they watch the show more intensely, and on a TV, and when they're on, and vice versa. So it engages them to do more on the mobile device if they're watching the TV show, and vice versa, if they're on the mobile device, it engages them to watch the TV show.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's
So
about,
viewer rating goes up too.
ultimately, it's about reacting to the market, right? Where are your audience and what device are they consuming your content? We still find big disparity between device type, because depending on the sector, depending on the type of content. We still see to this day fast fashion shoppable videos tend to be almost exclusively iPhone. Premium fashion tends to be almost exclusively iPad. And when we're doing things like TV trailers, they're always lunchtime viewings and they're almost exclusively still desktop. So yes, of course, react responsibly to every single device that possibly can, but ultimately it's about who's consuming your content and what device.
There's to me, I'm a big fan of the most convenient screen. Everything's basically an access pointer screen. So, my kids, for example, will watch something on an iPhone, but they'll watch it on the big screen TV, same content. So whatever's most convenient to them. I don't think you can be all in on any one platform. You have to make sure that whatever you're doing can translate to whatever's existing today to whatever's in the future. Obviously, you can look at your audience and evaluate maybe your prioritization of it, but OTT is only going to continue to grow and expand and get more effective. I think that the devices may change, but that core behavior is going to be there. And I also think the thing that is getting left out here is the format of the content is a big dictator of what device you may use. So if I'm watching an hour-and-a-half movie versus a 2-minute fashion video, it's a completely different expectation I have as far as what the experience is. So I think that's a huge indicator as far as what you may or may not use.
Sure. In terms of advertisers, so when you have conversation with advertisers, and let's take the interactive television, does it start the conversation with mobile, or do they say, whatever?
What advertisers want, right? They want as many touch points as they can get, and they want them to be quality touch points. So as long as if I'm a big brand, I go to my media agency, I'm like, I want this many impressions, I want this many calls to action, I want this many conversions, right? And then it's up to the publisher to give them enough opportunities to do that. Oftentimes the publisher doesn't have enough opportunities to continue to sell them more. So that's their big issue, it's a supply and demand issue. But I think at least what we're seeing on the brand side with the publisher is the brands are sick of pre-roll. The audiences are sick of pre-roll. So they want new types of ad integration points, whether it's a fun fact, or it's an interactive vote, or it's it could be direct commerce, but actually integrated within the experience itself versus this linear thing needs to start stopping.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that brands are starting with mobile. I think brands are looking at reaching whatever audience they want to reach on the right platform. I think that several years ago you were seeing people wanting to start with whatever the new shiny penny was out there, and perhaps it was mobile. I think what you're seeing with agencies now, as they're saying, is that there's still the need to have a media mix. There's still a need to figure out how linear or traditional television is playing a role amongst OTT, amongst mobile, amongst online, and I think that they're starting to get smarter around the fact that there is some level of cannibalism depending on who your audience is, and so they've got to be smarter around where they're placing their dollars. I think certainly mobile continues to be something interesting when you watch the big stats, whether it's be Facebook or BuzzFeed or some other of these outlets. They're saying, look, we capture a very large audience on to-go devices, but I think that when you translate that back to an agency, the agency is still saying to themselves that the philosophy of media mix doesn't go away. Television still has a role, these other devices have a role, and so I think the name of the game for them is where they're going to allocate their budget, and it's all driven by where do we think their audience is going to be, and how do they garner the largest number of eyeballs, and to your point, measurement plays a particular key too in terms of what they want to demonstrate as a successful way of engagement, but I don't ever think that agencies are going to lose sight of the fact that media mix continues to be important.
So I feel a healthy debate coming on here. So I I guess it would start with, from the brand's perspective, is what's the audience you're targeting, right? And what message are you looking to deliver, and how are you looking to engage them? Now, if you're talking to a millennial, or especially a Gen Z audience, they're all on mobile. They're 4 to 6 hours a day on mobile, and they don't even register on the TV. So it is, yes, there are many other outlets, and we have to look at all of those, and we're there. I mean, it's like we're on, we'll be on the Apple TV, but it starts with the application, right? So the app is going to be, back to your earlier question about the user experience, a little future proofing here is the app is going to be your source, right? So whether it's the mobile, whether it's on TV, we're going to be navigating channels eventually here very quickly via the app. And when once you have a company like Apple, really Google is starting to get a little nervous because the new search engine is going to be Siri, right, on your TV. And you're going to be able to channel surf via applications on your TV, just like you channel surf today. So we want to be ready for that. It's not there today. I'm not saying that's going to happen next month, but it is going to happen. And I think that's why. So when I say mobile, I'm thinking the application. Where does that app live? How do you deliver experience to that?
What about measuring engagement? How do you measure it? What tools are you using to say, okay, this was a good experience. We got something for our dollars. This was an effective campaign. It was a waste of money. How do you measure now that you have all these different interactive TV, different platforms, different measurement tools?
That goes back to what I was saying earlier, where we're analyzing a lot of the data coming back from the user experience, whether it's a mobile app or whether it's a TV. Scott was right about being, the app being the primary focus, because once you get the user to log into that app and the user control that app, the user experience doesn't actually just stop when the user's looking at TV. We're seeing companies like Pixel Exchange, which is developing Bitcoin apps, where people are actually going out into the world with that app and engaging the real world with that app, and going to retail stores and using that app, and that metadata is actually being tracked. So when you engage and you give that person points for going to Starbucks or going to McDonald's, and they're engaging, you're grabbing that metadata too, and that is all coming back, and the analytics of that tells you what that user is doing and what that user's trends are, and then you can program for that user and engage that user more in and capture more of that user's, capture that user more into what you're doing and involve them more into what you are doing, because there's a million apps out there and everybody's developing it, and the other thing we're seeing is actually in multiple apps is affiliate programs. So multiple apps are developing affiliate programs with each other to share users. So, this app will push users to you, and I'll push users to your app, and the different affiliate programs. Some affiliate programs will pay for those users and pay for that to capture those, so they can get that metadata and get that analytics built into them, so they can grow their app.
I think it comes down to what's the KPI. If it's a traditional broadcaster, it's how long do I have you? It's total engagement time. How long do I have your eyeballs? If you're a shoppable video, it's how many clicks and conversions am I getting? Or depending on what the programming is, like what we're working on with A&E is, shop while you watch. It's real-time shopping. One-click buying directly from the video while you watch the live linear program. Now for them, it's additional impressions for the advertiser, but it's in commerce, and then it's hopefully adding to, someone mentioned, the overall engagement with the live linear, creating more value around that, which in turn helps drive their ad revenue for the live linear side of it too. So there is a mix of, outcomes that can come from there, but, it's gonna vary based on what the content is and where it is.
Yeah, let's get a little bit more into that click to commerce. Are we there? Is that real? Is it happening soon? Do we have the technology?
I think it depends much on the experience and platform. I think, for example, like Josh mentioned, the page shop, that sounds like something that I would bet works very well. But sort of, I have a link in the 30-second pre-roll video that shows before CNN.com. I think it's very unlikely chance that someone.
By saying pre-roll, it's lost.
Yeah. Exactly. And maybe on platforms like YouTube and Facebook. So I don't think you can on Facebook yet, but on YouTube I think you have the opportunity to sort of highlight certain products and do clickouts. So I think that would work as well. Yeah, the cards and others.
So why do we see still so many pre-rolls?
I think it sells the brands, right?
Well, it's everyone's scared and it's a cash cow still, so go try to tell an executive, hey, let's kill pre-roll because we think this is a better idea, they'll all get fired. So but everyone knows we gotta get off of it, and so they're more open to bridging, trying new things.
But doesn't it have its place like the display banner ads do almost?
Yeah, but it's how they're deployed.
Right.
Like digitally, we don't have to think linearly. That's the beauty of digital, right? It's flexible. We can mold it. Broadcast television, that's the problem. It's a very linear way of telling stories, and so but it's a hard gap to bridge. But they realize they have to because at least what I'm hearing, their issue is pre-roll value keeps going down. Brands don't want it. The audience hates it, and they don't have anything to fall back on. But more banners and pop-ups and annoying crap like that. So, they need to start. I always say don't keep trying to force a linear thinking in the non-linear world. Stop staying here. I'll give you a really trite statement. Like, don't think out of the box. Like, create a new box. Like, create new paradigms, and that's what people are most scared of. But hopefully, some of the technologies we have are going to help that, which will make everybody happier. It's just, it's kicking and dragging, in my opinion.
Yeah, we had a meeting with Turner a couple of weeks ago, and they said their biggest single business challenge right now is trying to find an alternative to pre-roll advertising. Because ad blockers and other ways to circumvent advertising in that form, and people are finding alternative ways to content. So they're desperately trying to find something that's alternative. But just go back to shoppable video as a medium and a way of buying products within video. It does do extraordinarily well. Certainly on some content marketing, shoppable lookbooks, and fashion and beauty do incredibly well. Case in point, a video that we did for Ted Baker just before Christmas. They made $70,000 worth of sales from that one single video. A project we did a while ago for Essence, which is a Canadian fashion retailer, did $150,000 from one video in less than a week. And actually, surprisingly, still, we mentioned this earlier, like different sectors have different performance on different devices. But actually, different sectors actually have different performance in terms of commerce performance. Homeware, for example, shoppable homeware videos still do amazingly well. And some of the brands who work with like IKEA and Ballard Designs have been making upwards of $250,000 of sales from one single video. And that's unheard of. And if those videos had just been sitting on YouTube, they may have got some views where they would have made zero from any sales from that. And that's where things like shoppable video and interactive video.
Well, and to build on that, we're seeing the same thing. Like with Alice and Olivia, we had a 20% conversion rate off of a fashion video, a runway show video. And it took us like 10 minutes to make, or I should say they made. But the point is if somebody's watching that video, they're watching it with an intent to begin with, right? Like no one's watching a runway video to watch a runway video. They're watching because they're interested in the brand and why they're there. All we're doing is connecting the dots a little quicker. What we're trying to do one step further is work with the Visa and the Home Shopping Network to fully integrate commerce and the secure checkout directly within the experience. So somebody doesn't even have to go to a PDP page to finish the conversion.
Yeah.
Like they can literally just click and move on and they bought the product.
But now that you have these examples, these are good examples of success. So why are not more companies jumping on?
They are.
So
They're all starting to.
Yeah, I would say, not only are they, and we are as well, but it's starting to happen a lot earlier. So we're thinking about that content to commerce play, as we're developing the story. So we have 3 pilots, right now in production. All of them have brand sponsors attached to them. All of them have, a content to commerce component. So we're thinking about the storyline, as you build out the narrative. And in that narrative, how do you, again, authentically showcase that sponsor? Because that sponsor is now really thinking about how do I make my investment in the program, in the content, which will go everywhere, whether or not somebody takes an action or not. In fact, in many cases, what we're finding is, and I espouse this, is, don't put the Coke can, right? If it's Coca-Cola, you don't need to do that. Right, it's no longer about the brand product placement. In fact, that is kind of cheesy now. It's more about what's the lifestyle of the brand, right? And everyone is Red Bull TV, and what they're doing. So, it's you don't have to even showcase the brand. What you do is you showcase the lifestyle delivered through that channel, in association with that type of audience, and then the hooks on that content are what we call the actions on.
100% agree with you.
This just going back to what Josh was saying about those shoppable video experiences. You're primed as a consumer at that point, right? So you're entering the shopping experience. When you kind of try and translate this to long-form narrative with product placement, with actual product placement, so you can different products by them, that's largely been untested. Because you're primed, you're in a different mindset. You're actually consuming long-time entertainment. I'm not entirely convinced that that's a place where people will be shopping products.
Yeah, we'll know this summer with some of the stuff we're doing, but I think it's one of those where it's an opportunity cost. I always explain it like this. You weren't making money before. If anything, as long as the cost to deploy it isn't overwhelming, which is usually the issue, as long as that isn't overwhelming, it's found money. Any sale you make is more money than you made otherwise, so why not? And most people nod their head, but it comes down to, and I'm sure you've encountered this quite a bit, workflow, like who's going to do it, how's it going to be deployed. So to me, the big part we're not talking about is who is actually going to be making this stuff and deploying it. Like I'm talking to New York Daily News. They're huge, tons, right? I mean, everybody loves their gossip. You go there for video, they have 2 people for that entire organization that handle video across every platform.
So it's creativity versus scalability issue.
Yeah, it literally comes down to a human, like who is going to actually deploy. Yes, it can make us more money, but I can't put it on Ted's desk. He's already doing 20 other things, right? Okay. So those are some of the bigger obstacles when you asked earlier, why isn't everyone doing something? It's usually just some of the base logistics things internally. Right? I mean, I don't know if you've encountered this, but it comes down to who's going to do it.
Well, yeah, this is unfortunately, thanks Josh, but this unfortunately is where I put a shameless plug in for Wireworks, which is that we plugged in a lot of artificial intelligence into our system, so face recognition, object detection, all of those objects can be recognised, products can be recognised in the video, which is actually doing 90% of the manual labour that's involved in actually creating these experiences. So that's what we're trying to do. We know that that's a fundamental problem with the workflow getting these things out, is that people just don't have the time to capacity.
Yeah, the same thing with us, not in the object side, but just mass scaling, being able to add, update, modify things across real time. But it still comes down to someone deciding in pre-production, here's what we want to do, or here's the fact we want to put out, or there's always going to be the human element to it, especially with content, because there's so much editorial opportunity and things are always changing, to where I get asked all the time, oh, could we put in word searches that I'll pull in, and I'm like, have you ever tried Googling something? Can you imagine if somebody just left it roughshod and what could come up in search, and get pulled in? And there's always going to be a human element of editorial, but you're right, it's as much as, that's our whole goal too. It's like, how can we make it as simple as possible, but it still takes somebody to oversee it.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
we're actually, a lot of our advertising agencies have doubled or tripled the video content provider. We had one ad agency in Chicago that had 25 people in print and 2 people in video, and now now they got 8 people in video, and they're actually working to produce shows that actually have no pre-roll, no commercials whatsoever, but are involving the product and not necessarily product placement, because I agree with you that product placement is anti. It actually pushes people away. But if you take that content and if you take that product and make it a character, give that a role in the production, then it gives much more involvement. We had one company who did an advertising campaign for a vodka, and they went from bar to bar, and the vodka was a central character in the production, and they had people following that production from bar. They had fans following that product from bar to bar, and it really increased viewer abilities, and people were not clicking away as they were consuming it.
We were talking about bottleneck on the human being. What about the technology? Dealing with different screen size, different video formats, that seems like to be a nightmare, especially mobile. So how do you address that?
Actually, with companies like there's from Telestream, companies like Vantage, which are high-end video processors, which can create, so instead of creating a video file instead of creating 5 separate video files, one for your TV, one for iPads, and one for iPhones and stuff like that, you actually create one hybrid video file that sits on a server, and then you create these proxy files which have the codecs for the different screen resolutions. So and the one biggest example of that is the Apple preview channel. If you go to apple.com and watch television previews, you can watch the videos in brilliant resolution in 3 to 4 different resolution sizes. But they only have one video file on the server, and then they have a small video proxy file that's literally less than a megabyte of file that tells it the different resolutions. It gives it the codec setting, and also there's a lot of work being done with JPEG 2000. Some work that's being done with companies like Snell to develop really good codecs for creating videos. And we do a lot with codecs development, a lot with developing different technology resolutions and servers that can handle these things, but that don't take a large footprint. Because the biggest problem we had in the past was creating files and having huge big data files for one video. And nowadays, with companies like Snell and Telestream, you don't have to have that.
And then there's a user experience issue with people holding the phone, like when you Snapchat, you hold it vertical, and then the television is horizontal. So different video production, or
one of the main things we try to focus on is flexibility. So it's not about force fitting, necessarily what our format or design is. It's more of giving them there's some templates, but giving them ultimately the ability to design it themselves. Once you go into mass scale at any big organization, they're going to want to own their own design and user experience. So that's what we try to facilitate more. We'll obviously collaborate and give as much input as they want us to put in, but understanding that we're not going to tell MAC what to do, right? And they need it to be wherever they want to go. So it's just trying to make the technology nimble enough so it can go wherever those different or emerging platforms are.
Well, you had mentioned also infrastructure. I think the biggest thing that's standing in the way is everyone's being forced, or all the large media companies are looking to do more with less, particularly staff-wise. So as standards become inconsistent and the technology is not going to be there, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that stands in the way of adapting mass scaling. Everyone wants to be able to do one thing but then deploy it across multiple devices. We're just not there. To your point, use the 10, right? Organizations are looking to say, we want to do more, we'd like to experiment with these different platforms, but we only have one guy, right? And that one guy needs to satisfy lots of different screens and lots of different content deployment. So I think at least a lot of the large media companies are saying, we've got to place our bets on things that are going to deliver a standard that lets us get to scale using our existing workforce.
Which is why pre-roll hasn't died yet.
Exactly. Yeah, well, and that's where some of the, even though traditional television, digital is making such a strong play, but there's still traditional thinking still that exists, right? And I think as you start to identify on the agency side and on the media seller side, that thinking needs to change, but also the way you organize your organization in terms of who's going to do the work and the tools that you're going to use. Unless that starts to change, media organizations and agencies are still going to have to make tough trade-offs around, I can't do all things, so I can only do 5 of them and I need to do them really well, and I'm probably going to be placing my bets on those folks that deliver standards and scalability that allow us to reach the audiences we want to reach.
I actually want to respond to that in the sense of, yeah, this is an issue that we're looking at. I mean, we have for the ATLX, athletics, in some cases we have our own programming. In other cases, we may be streaming live events. In all cases, we have some type of editorial attached, or in whatever environment, from that experience standpoint, how do you take different, not only formats of particular content. In fact, yes, and I agree with single file kind of produced in multiple formats and however you want to access it. But what happens when that on-demand video, right? You've got that in one channel, and then you have live programming in another channel, all delivered from the same app. So it's a challenge. It's one that we're dealing with right now.
Somebody's gotta just knock it out of the park, and then everybody's gonna follow. That's the real answer, because you're gonna be like, okay, I can see the dollar signs. I won't get fired if someone else did it and they were successful. We said we want to do that too. So it just always comes down to who's the first big organization that actually does it.
Are you gonna be the one?
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
That's what my wife's counting on.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about live streaming. You touched it real quick. So what's going on with live streaming? Becoming more and more important. We hear deals, Twitter, NFL, Twitter signed a deal with NFL. Is that going to take over on demand? Are we going to go back from live television to on demand and back to live?
It's yes, in a little bit we will. I mean, it's not. I always say this, it's not that any one thing is going to take over or destroy the other, right? I mean, linear television is still going to be here. On demand still going to be here. We're going to have different windows. We just continue to expand the choices, and then the consumers are ultimately the one in charge, and they're gonna choose for themselves. What we are finding, and to question about live, and this is my own speculation, is live is going to do what YouTube did long ago, right? YouTube, created this fascination over snackable content that people just came on and started, and other content creators realized, oh crap, I can make a business out of this, right? And just make a bunch of really fun videos and sell some advertising or rev share with YouTube against some advertising. Live is going to do the same thing, but in a real-time, engaging format. People are fascinated with watching somebody live, because when they screw up, you can't do anything about it, right? So they're watching that. There's different statistics already. It's fairly new, but anywhere from 4 to 10 times longer than they would if it was just a video on demand, if they are in fact watching it live right there. You're also finding that content creators are already looking at this medium as saying, hey, I can now create a new way to engage with my audience, and marketers are doing the same thing. And now you're going to find that Facebook and Twitter with Periscope are going to start promoting it more. So if there are any content creators in the audience, that's a hint. Facebook is going to promote you for free, even though they're pushing the media, because they want to see more live channels. They want to promote their new services. So this is an opportunity for content creators to really get some eyeballs.
I think one of the couple of things that I see that the big pushes to live is, in one aspect, the entertainment industry is dealing hugely big with piracy issues. I create this content, I want to put it out there. I put it out there, and the next thing it's on kick-ass torrents, and I'm losing rev share. But if you do a live production, you can't copy. You can't steal live because it's happening right there. So I see a lot of our content producers and our distribution companies actually coming into live because they know now that this is something that you can't steal. The other thing we're seeing is a lot more user engagement. If you have something that's live, you can engage the user in that live event much more, and they can be involved in the event. So even if they're not going to the event, like with Coachella, Coachella had a live feed that allowed people to interact with people at Coachella, and get that dialogue going, which created more people coming onto the live event. So we're more user engagement and the ability for the content producers and distributors to not lose control of the rev share.
I think it offers turns out to make a much more impactful placement in front of consumers. I think that live television programs or live content is synonymous with something that's social, something very social about it. You get together and you watch the Super Bowl, it's the biggest live event of the year. You watch the Oscars, you get Oscars parties. And then also just on social media goes crazy over those events with all the hashtags that happen. And I think for TV at least, what we see a lot is that people, while they watch TV, are on Twitter, tweeting about what characters do and review shows and sorts of things. So I think it offers advertisers an opportunity to reach people in an impactful way. And I think that hopefully, I think it's a good trend for us to get back to strategies. Give some of this back to live TV instead of on-demand content.
Any innovation that you guys have heard of? 360-degree video live streaming, YouTube offers that. Anything else that around live streaming that comes to your mind?
Well, we're working with a number of our clients to develop 360. 360 and VR and all that is still a relatively new thing for content producers, but we're actually seeing a spike in actually live VR and live 360 events that we're really getting involved in, and I think it's going to be huge. We have different clients of ours who are musicians who want to do these, after-party rock houses where they're engaged, where they're having their crew come in and party at their house, and putting that and making that to a 360 VR experience, and engaging their fans who come backstage and actually be backstage with them. Not many of us get to party with the Rolling Stones, but if we could be in backstage with the Rolling Stones and have, that's an experience that I could sell really easily.
I'm not totally convinced about 360 or VR or the future of it, to be perfectly honest. But in the last 6 months, we probably had 2 or 3 inquiries a day. People looking to make 360 video an interactive experience. And so we have buckled and we've developed the technology. So it's now available for most of our clients now to use. But I'm not entirely convinced about 360 or actually live 360. And I don't know whether, I know very unlikely anybody in the room actually bought it, but last week or the week before, YouTube did the first ever live 360 video. And I didn't see it, but my brother sent me a screen capture just at the end of the video as it was going out. It had 36 views in the bottom right-hand corner of the page. So it obviously wasn't particularly exciting, but there are actually more people in the room with the 360 video than people watching it. So, yeah, but it's exciting, it's interesting to see, and 360 does get a wow. When you first use it, the first time I used it, I was like, wow, this is really quite impressive. Second time, I don't know, not so much.
Not that many use cases, I guess, yeah.
Not really, no.
We always say you've got to do it for a purpose.
It's still experimental too.
Yeah, people are just doing it because it's cool, but not yet doing it without any real purpose.
Well, I think the technology needs to get better. The new Facebook camera, the open source Facebook camera that's come out is exciting to us, and some of the other new cameras that we've seen, but also some of the processing power has got to get better because it's a huge hold on the servers that process this video, and not that many people can afford to put that kind of implementation in there. So you know, there's a lot that needs to get, I agree, there's a lot that needs to get done before this starts coming of age, but it's working there.
Okay, I would like to talk a little bit about programmatic ads, programmatic video ads. That big gold rush there, what's your take on that?
Well, I suppose I can start since the video is a programmatic platform. You know, I think obviously budgets are going towards programmatic. I think the future is going to be programmatic in many ways, not just the automation of buying and more automated process of transaction, but automated planning. And I think that's definitely one of our focus is trying to leverage data from different sources to basically programmatize the entire process of planning your buy, your media mix, as we were talking about earlier, where audiences fall off, where audiences are, you know, where it's impactful for them. And so yeah, I think there's a very large part of the advertising industry that's going to be programmatic going forward. I think live streaming will be something programmatic going forward.
Are brands publishers sold on the effectiveness? Is it you get something for your dollars? Is it really that effective?
I think the budgets that have, I think the shift in budget towards programmatic sort of proves that brands are very interested in it. I think there are, of course, like every method, there are problems and challenges that programmatic faces. Fraud, these sorts of things. But it's up to essentially it's up to the platform to just work hard to prove and sort of raise the bar.
When I think programmatic, I think what I find most interesting, at least on the media company side, is that for traditional linear folks, it's one of the most popular topics that they're looking to figure out. I think the biggest challenge when you talk about looking at what programmatic meant to digital and how that's being translated to traditional television is, it means lots of things to lots of different people. So you get a room and we could poll everyone in this room and chances are not any two people are going to have the exact same definition of what programmatic means. So I think when you look at these large traditional television companies that are saying, is programmatic a way for us to sell differently and to sell by audience? That sounds really interesting to them, particularly if they don't have the data to sell based off of audience. So most traditional television companies are still selling by day part, program, age intent, right? And so unless you're a satellite company that has access to set-top box data, you can't really sell beyond day part program. Programmatic is one way in which not only they can deliver an audience-based solution, but also drive greater automation. And so when we talk about being able to do more with less, I think it's one of the biggest or hottest topics, but I think for linear television, but again, to your point, there is some concern around, is programmatic for traditional television race to the bottom, right? And I think it's way too early to tell. I think it's demonstrated in digital that it doesn't need to be. And I think that particularly for traditional television companies that are only selling day part program, now they can sell by audience. It is an opportunity for it not to be a race for the bottom. But I think the biggest challenge that's standing in the way of programmatic right now is being able to have media companies get a better understanding of what does it mean to you? What is it? How do you want to deploy it? And what is that mechanism? It is a way in which you can sell remnant inventory that you can't sell in general market. It's a way for which you move into the audience-based space that you can't traditionally play in today. So I think that's the biggest misconception. Everyone says, I want to do programmatic. The next question you need to ask is, what does that mean to you? But I would argue, at least for large media companies, it is one of the single biggest topics they're trying to get their head around as it relates to the upfronts that are taking place, because agencies are saying, look, we're going to be starting to migrate some of our budgets to more programmatic executions in the sales channel. So now media companies are asking themselves, how am I going to respond to that? And what mechanisms or safeguards do I put in place so it doesn't cannibalize my general rate business?
A lot of broadcasters I'm talking to right now is, they're actually building their own native sales teams. They're creating new formats in direct sales because a lot of the programmatic offerings right now just aren't moving the needle enough. They're not making enough money off them. The margins suck, to be honest. Native, they can charge a much higher premium for. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think programmatic, though, as it gets smarter, it can take that place. I think it'll kind of be almost a mixture of the two, where they're smart auto-generated ads versus this remnant crap that, you know, is just pennies on, you know, it's pennies. And unfortunately, a huge percentages of their overall inventory, like 40–50% at the end of the month, ends up being remnant, which they don't make anything off of. So I think whoever can crack that is really got something.
Well, I think to your point, the beauty of programmatic will be that automation piece that says, can I actually get the right audience data that allows me to serve the right ads to the right person, right? And I think particularly in the experimental phase, you're not necessarily seeing that happen. You're saying, all right, well, I'm just gonna put it on this platform that delivers me some automation and helps manage my ad sales through the entire ecosystem, but I'm like actually reaching the right audience. And certainly traditional television that is trying to capitalize on some of the advancements in digital is trying to get their head around that. But again, in traditional television, a lot of the data is locked up by very few players out there, right? And so it's figuring out how do you unlock some of that data that gives you more rich audience-based profiles that allows us to serve up ads to the right people, right? Also driving that automation piece, because I think for programmatic, not only is it the audience piece, but it's also the automation piece, right? If automation allows me to do more with less, whilst also delivering the right ad to the right person, that's the holy grail, but you have to bring both of those two things together.
Well, that's the holy grail. That's the I'm selling to Ford directly as NBC, a big deal, and then I have a tech that then I can guarantee they're getting quality impressions.
Right. I mean,
that's the hard part.
That's the hard part. We had someone tell us the other day. They said, "Well, we're going to do programmatic and it's going to be audience based, but I think we're still going to negotiate the deal." And I said, "All right, that's not programmatic, right? Then you're losing all the automation that comes out of it. You're getting the audience based component of programmatic, but you're losing the automation piece." So I think the industry still needs to drive towards a consolidated idea that says programmatic has to be delivering automation with audience-based buying that goes through your entire ad sales ecosystem. You can't be doing or eliminating any one of those three pieces.
Right.
Just kind of gets you back to direct response or general rate or remnant ad sales, right? And so to move that needle forward, it's got to be the automation and the audience-based piece really being married together.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Scott, your point of view is ads are doomed?
You know, again, it's not gonna happen today. We're still a little ways out, but I'm of the belief that content creators and providers and publishers can start to really work with their audiences in a more efficient way. Just like a recommendations engine, it's great to get closer to what your audience is like. But you know, if I already purchased that shirt, jacket, whatever, I don't want to keep seeing the ad for it. It kind of irritates me. So you know, we're getting into tools, and again, this is very new. It's going to be very early stage, but we want to get into tools where our audiences are actually telling us what they like, so that we can start serving up the right content, so we can start serving up the right sponsors and producers, and serving less advertising. That's our holy grail.
Higher quality, lower.
Higher quality.
Yeah.
I'd rather be more narrow.
Well, it's recognizing that you bought that, the user bought that jacket, remembering that you bought that jacket, and then recommending what goes with that jacket, and then bringing that content, bringing that to people.
I'll go one further and give you guys give you a little bit, I guess, different visual of this. What I'm referencing is so Under Armour, right? How many people have the MyFitness app? Okay, there's a couple in here. So Under Armour, this is a scenario where the health app itself, the tracking app, we built an audience around the stats and personal health stats, and Under Armour came in and actually acquired the company for $150 million. Now that was the best advertising, because now Under Armour owns that audience, and they own that experience around that audience. So this is where where my position is. I only speak for myself and ATLX, is we want to have many experiences like that, right? Every single channel, every single sport, every single activity tied to who is the right sponsor for that activity, and really deliver that audience on an ongoing relationship. So our our sponsors aren't just, this is a media buy, our sponsors are partners. And I think that is going to be a whole game changer. So I want to ask each of you just a final question before we go into questions from the audience. What brings the future? What exciting projects and products and tools is your company currently working on that you can share with the audience? And if it's not your company, anything that you have heard that we should put attention next year that relates to this conversation? Who wants to start? There can be a short comment, can be 2 minutes, 1 minute, but just want to hear what you think is going to happen next
I'll
year.
start. Well, from our perspective, what we're really working on this year is remaining 100% focused on solving the cross-screen problem, basically building a bridge between those screens. So we'll be leveraging TV partners to extend audiences, basically have millisecond by millisecond breakdown of what an audience or what a user watches on TV, being able to then match that on a one-by-one basis to desktop mobile devices, OTT, and basically that's our focus for the rest of the year, essentially. In addition to that, we'll be sort of onboarding pretty unique inventory sources that will allow self-serve agencies, people who want to log in and use our platform self-serve, just very in an automated way plan and buy very premium content.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about future of wireless 360 that I touched on a bit already. We're actually doing a lot more with live content now, so we do things like face recognition and object detection and stuff. It's always been on pre-recorded content up until now, and the holy grail, I suppose, is to apply that to direct response, QVC, shopping network channels where you can actually watch a live feed on a mobile device and it will actually highlight the open products that you buy within the feed itself and being able to shop them directly rather than have to go to another different point to buy. It's sort of shortcutting that for a consumer journey. And in addition to that, we're plugging a lot more of those artificial intelligence tools into our system. We think that there is a lot to be gained from machines understanding what happens in video. Because video is still largely analog, right? It's still just pixels just moving around with machines and laptops and mobile devices. They know how to display those pixels, but they have no understanding of what those pixels represent. So we're constantly striving to extract that metadata automatically out in real time so we can ascertain more about what's happening in the video. And you can obviously do so much more with that data, right? So you can obviously search for content, textual content within video, and also do things like discovery and recommendation. But also, touch on programmatic advertising as well, with being able to advertise relevant content and ads to contextual content. So, yeah, very exciting stuff.
Very cool.
So what excites, what we're working on a lot is, what is something that Marcus is involved in, which is media asset management. And I touched on the talk, but coming from the devices to the providers. But also we're doing a lot of scale outs of teaching content creators to really capture the proper metadata. Because everybody's got video content. There's millions of people out there producing video content. And content is all over the place. But what's going to separate the different content providers is the level of asset management that they're capturing. So not only capturing, because when you start capturing asset management from the lens, from the beginning, what lighting sources you're working with, the lighting sources can help in post. If you know what lighting sources you have, help in post. If you know what lens and f-stop and everything you're doing, every single thing, from the place that you're recording, the actors that are recording it, the directors, to every bit of media asset management. If you go onto Amazon.com, you go to any frame, you can hover your mouse over any frame, and every actor who's in that thing, their bios are coming up, and you can get that, and that's engaging the content. But if you don't know who those actors are, if you don't know the environment that you're in, that is lost data. And that is becoming more and more valuable. So the Netflixes and the Hulus and all the people who are buying the content are saying, we want more metadata, we need that more metadata. So we're working really hard to train with our content creators on how to capture metadata and how to catalog that. And and there's a lot with automated content creating, with facial recognition, with converting the spoken word to text, and then turning that to text into meta tags and creating that. You don't have to be diligent, and you can set up automated systems. But you have to know how to do it. You have to know the process. And if you don't capture proper metadata, then your video is going to be less attractive to people who are going to buy your metadata, buy your content. Because there's plenty of content around, but the metadata is going to be the key for making money and selling your content to providers. And that's what we're trying to train our people. Because we do all the technology, hard drive to hard drive, computer to computer, but the metadata and how you capture it is going to be the golden goose, for the future, for the holy grail.
Okay. Trevor?
I
What's the
mean,
future? Right.
mine's gonna sound much simpler, I think, than what we've currently heard, but it's gonna be more of a personal thing for me. I'm just interested in continuing to watch the lines blur between television and digital. I mean, I think, we have, the industry has been talking for such a long time, call it TV everywhere or video everywhere. I think it's just video consumption. I don't think that we've seen a pivot point as great as what we're seeing this year. I mean, if you look 5 years ago, there was one new front, and the upfronts were still happening. New fronts are taking place in New York this week. There are 40 of them, from some of the most unusual suspects, from Hulu to WebMD to Pop Sugar. So I think, and then you hear this most recent announcement about Hulu getting into the competitive to cable. You've got PlayStation Vue, you've got Roku. So I just think that we are at a significant pivot point of consumers asking themselves, how do I get a TV-like experience, or more importantly, consume the video that I want to watch on more platforms than I've ever watched before? And you're watching some traditional players trying to get into the digital space, you're watching some digital players evaluating how they look more like a traditional player, whether it be a cable provider or cable subscription. So that, and then you have some interesting things like you have Time Warner Cable, who's doing a new front. So I think those lines are going to continue to blur, and I think it's going to continue to support the concept of TV or video everywhere. And I think particularly in this year moving into 2017, that's going to be something to really watch closely.
Okay, Scott, really short on
Yeah.
the audience.
I actually would also say I would agree with that, and I would even go with there's going to be lines blurred even further between the content itself and the participants, right? The actual public out there, and how they are going to really become a part of that content creation.
John, I agree with everyone. You know,
Okay, questions? Yes?
Yeah, well, when you talked about engagement, you talked how to measure after you published an app or you created a video. Do you use any tools or any neuromarketing tools to predict engagement before you release your product?
Yeah, we do that all the time. So we record about 150 data points from every viewing every second. So we have to build our own system to try and manage this fire hose of data. And we've got a bunch of PhD guys that do our computer vision and artificial intelligence. They can actually use the data based on interactions that people make to determine the best place to not just on temporal placement, so in terms of where time to place the best interaction point, but also position within the frame, and also the object that it's attached to, whether it's a person, product, or an object as well. So yeah, it's really exciting stuff.
Yes?
Okay, so I know I'm gonna get tomatoes thrown at me, but I actually do not mind advertising, because I work so much that when I finally go online or finally watch TV or something, it sort of puts me in touch with what's coming out. And I actually find like creative commercials very entertaining. So I can't be the only person, maybe I am, I don't know. But that was my one comment. And also like 360 filming, okay, Robert, 360 filming in real estate. So I do real estate, I have a web series in real estate, and I'm looking for like inexpensive ways to do this. I mean, do you see it becoming more mainstream in like, because that's a perfect venue for this technology, because it's all about the spaces and what's going on within the spaces.
Well, we've seen a lot of actually, a lot of people doing 360 videos of real estate. You know, there's Keller Williams and other companies can do video walkthroughs. We did a project with Home and Garden TV for some of their homes that they were wrapped, that they had a contest where you can raffle off, and you could walk through that, and they took programs and did you know, stitching programs to stitch it. Back huge, many years ago, I was actually involved in one of the very first VR projects, which was, I worked with Apple back then, and I'm an Apple engineer, but back then I worked really directly with Apple, and we stitched the first VR project, which was the Oval Office, which is you can spin around the Oval Office. And there's been a lot of that, and it's actually not that expensive. You don't even need a VR camera. You can take a camera and get an and buy an automated slider, and it can take a 360 video of a room, and then you can use there's many inexpensive stitching programs. Morpheus is one of them that does a really good program for stitching photographs together and creating a 360 environment. And they actually have a camera that's designed for that. And we also do a lot with advertising, with products, taking a product and having the product rotate and taking a picture as it's rotating around in a circle, and then stitching that together. So there's, in real estate, people want to walk through and watch and go to different rooms, and that's been really out there and been done very inexpensively these days.
One or two more questions? Yes?
So with the advertising model right now being pushed to consumer, what is keeping something where the consumer is basically demanding the advertising? So in other words, right now you do a Google search, maybe it'll show up in your feed as some other advertising. So it almost is like there's two separate worlds. If I need to go buy something, I was looking for some particular piece of software recently. So I'm going on the internet, I'm searching for it, I'm going to websites and looking at reviews, and yet I'm also being forced to watch advertising that has nothing to do with car advertising. I'm looking for a car right now. So what's keeping this from stitching together from a demand perspective from the consumer? What, other than trust, what's keeping the consumer from basically kind of saying, hey, I'm interested in this, send me stuff that's relevant, and within this time frame, other than trust, what's keeping that from happening?
Well, actually, it's a great question, and actually an opportunity to respond to both, because I don't in any way want to represent that I'm not interested in advertising. I think it's relevant advertising, right? It's something that's meaningful, and it's going to be authentic with the content, right? Because we talk about consumers all the time and advertising disruption with consumers, but as a content creator and brands, it's disruption with your content too. Right? So if there's inconsistent advertising happening against my episode or series or content, there's also a negative reaction. But if we can create a better connection, whether that be programmatic, whether that be the tools that are available to us, and interested, the metadata, right, as we were talking about, to create a more synthesis between what is the content, who is the consumer watching it, right? What are their interests? And what's the best fit from a representative sponsor or brand advertiser? Now, that is happening. I mean, I talk about the future. It's happening more and more. And we're getting very close. We're not there yet, but it's getting very close. Those experiences are going to happen where I'm searching for something. Not only are you getting the right advertising presented to you, but you're actually getting content creators that are creating content about that product you want. So, and for one, I prefer to watch a video, right, on something that I'm going to buy than I do an ad.
Last question.
I was wondering if you guys have seen AI, machine learning play a role, not on the content serving side, but in the content production side, so like script analysis, that kind of thing. And also more generally, if you see AI is playing a bigger and bigger role going forward in actually creating content.
I've seen it more in the aggregation education side of content. So it's the recommendation engines, things like that. That's sort of more mainstream. I do think it'll continue to get better. But they're talking about taking things, stitching them together, and producing, a linear piece of content. We're probably a little ways off of that.
Yeah, well, actually, that's not far off. We've been doing some testing in that way. The consumer would revisit a retailer's website and show them a video on that page that's tailored based on their previous buying habits. And all it's doing is just cherry picking clips from a predetermined set,
Right.
and then just putting it together
Recommendation.
back to the video form. So it's not particularly clever, there's no AI involved in that, but that's all personalised video that's editing dynamically on the fly.
Okay, well, that concludes the session. Thank you very much.
I'm recording this, so if anybody wants to share this with people, I'm going to post it on my YouTube. So if you give me your business card, I'll send you the link to the video. And thank you very much. And if you want a USB drive, I have a USB drive here. If anybody wants one. Okay. There you go.
Thank you very much.
I know.
I was in the bid hall, and I'm going, oh, they must be running late. 20 minutes, I'm sitting there, and then I go to the next one, I go to the next one, I go to the next one, I go to the next one. I have your card already.
And I have a question, just to really add, so what you're saying is, we're having a discussion where.
Hey, one second. Hey, I want to introduce this Oh, hi, got it. This is the 420 guy. Oh, you're the 420 guy. Nice to meet you. Thank you. This is my business card. Just like you.
So no, that's okay. That was a narrative content, is that scripted narrative, they had an introduction where if I'm watching that, I can scroll over or touch it, and anything, like if they're eating something, I can find out what the recipe is. How far do you think we're off from that?
We're there. We can do that. I can do that right now.
Where? So I want to watch that. What is it?
Well, it's all, like I said, it all has to do with asset. It all has to do with asset do that, all the data there, the programming and that's easy.
So like, so we're a tool, right?
I mean, it depends. It can be done really relatively extensively. I mean, metadata, lots of some cloud data programs per project basis. So if you're doing a format project, this project, then you can do it in the cloud system and project.
No, we've had that.
A lot. If you do a lot of content and you want to buy the system yourself, put it in your server, buy it costs a lot of money. I mean, not huge, not billions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands, but $10,000, depending on what you're doing. But you can create and then have, if you're doing a lot, if you're doing only a couple here and there, then you can do some really easy
What is that called? What is that called to do that?
This weekend.
Part of that.
Okay, cool. I know this is what we're talking about, but I'll look into it. I'd like to yours because I didn't bring it with me. I will, absolutely. Thank you so much.